DTM stocks, we got TQQQ getting ready to enter on the long side today. FNGU continues to build into position. NVIDIA out on the sidelines, and Tesla continues to build into open profit. Both of those, FNGU and Tesla, up now 20%, more than 20%. Taking a look at what's going on over here, looking on a daily chart at Bitcoin, we could see as we've come close. We didn't tag exactly where we had structural resistance. We were looking at this just over here, just into the whole number, 100,000. Price not making it, pulling back into what was resistance, now turned into support. Is there any concerns over here? Right now, I continue to see price consolidating thus far, very healthy. And as long as we say, I'm going to go ahead to off the bottom of this, of the bottom of that wick and just realign the structure over here. As long as we're above that line over here, as we continue to consolidate, everything is looking extremely healthy. Just consolidating the gains of this massive move out on the breakout, spurred by Donald Trump's election victory, no doubt, is seeing a potential lower high being put in. You can see the high over here, and then we came down into support, and thus far now we're underneath that lower structure. Or is that more flaggy? Or are we seeing a bull flag develop right now? Too soon to tell. We'll continue to navigate as we continue forward. I want you to pay attention over here as we're looking at structure. And over the last couple of years, well, not last couple of years, but certainly well over a year, we've spent a lot of time not only developing structure, but pointing out how it works. Some of you might be familiar with two things. Where Bitcoin bottomed in November, and then in December, we saw the two touches of the structure. It's kind of neat because that's exactly what the top looked like if you go into October 2021 and into November. We had those two touches as well. Beautiful stuff. And it's not the same. Over here, you could go to March 2021 and then April 2021. Both two touches on the structure. And this structure, it persists. And it persists since Bitcoin's inception, and specifically in this new regime since 2014 that we're in. It's really important as we go forward to be aware of that. By the way, I love doing these presentations live. I love doing them out in the public. I love the energy you all bring. If at any point in time you enjoy being here, go ahead and smash the like button. Please, please get me going over here because we got an awesome session ahead of us. Let's continue. This session has a lot to do with Bitcoin long-term power law. Something that you might have seen before. I know that I have seen it before. And I was like, yeah, okay, kind of like whatever. And today I was asked to look more into it. And as I was looking into this, what I was looking to kind of more or less, prove that it's inferior or maybe even debunk it. And it's so funny, as I was doing all this, the opposite happened. It turns out Bitcoin's power law is totally legit. But what we're going to do now is add some price accuracy to it. This, in a sense, could really help shape and form your long-term investments. This chart is kind of weird to me, but I was researching the author. I was looking at Medium. I really like the way that this rendition of the power law is described. Some people trying to debunk it. People are saying, come on, watch. I'm going to debunk it over here. And their main reason is this, that like Bitcoin's US dollar price is not exponential because it doesn't look like a straight line in a log linear chart. It's curved downwards, and it's indicating that the growth of Bitcoin is not accelerating as fast as an exponential process, but in a sense, slowing down, diminishing returns over time. So I think it's kind of interesting to see all the different points of an argument. Right here, someone's pointing to diminishing returns and saying it can't possibly be true. You all might be familiar with the work that we've done. We started doing this work in actually December 2021. Is when we first brought up not only what the S-curve looks like, S-curve adoption under Bitcoin, but what it looks like in the next phase. The phase that we were in then was facing reality. The hype phase is the beginning, and then you have the ultimate market opportunity. Now, we have presented what happens as you come into this phase of the S-curve adoption. And this is all hypothesis. This is all speculation. We don't know what happens in the future, but we try to each and every day firm up our own beliefs to help us make investment decisions. And if at any point in time we are presented with evidence that changes our view, we have no problem in a heartbeat pivoting to what we believe to be the truth. We've looked at Amazon. Amazon is something that's undergone S-curve adoption. You can see the hype phase here, then the facing reality phase in this area, and then Amazon went off into its ultimate market opportunity. What's interesting here is I'm going to make some observations. One observation that I want to make is that, and we just did this last week together on a live session, and we talked about, isn't that interesting that the structure on Amazon that took place during the hype phase and in the facing reality phase continues to this day. And for me, I find this fascinating. I find markets fascinating. I love learning about markets all the time. What's also interesting is you could see that up until this point over here, if you were looking at a chart of Amazon, you would say, this is Amazon going through facing reality. By the way, as Bitcoin is now entering the ultimate market opportunity, it's very clear to each and every one of us the rapid pace of adoption that's taking place. It is very, very clear to us as we've exiting the early adopters. You, me, we're all early adopters. We're now beginning the very beginning phase of the early majority. And it goes early majority, late majority, and that's where you see it flatten off the adoption. What's interesting about this, if you were looking at a chart of Amazon and you were looking at the hype phase and then you were looking at the facing reality phase, you would make the assumption that Amazon is experiencing diminishing returns. What is very interesting is that as Amazon enters into the ultimate market opportunity, you start seeing exponential growth to the upside. You see a change in behavior. And what's interesting is that the price actually, instead of people might have thought, if this was the structure, that price would, from now on, being towards the lower tier or the lowest tier, it's actually found its way, not to the very top of the hype phase, but very close, definitely the top quarter, top third portion of the structure. Fascinating. Amazon's not the only asset that's done that. Obviously, you could see Microsoft in its early hype phase, and then you could see Amazon in its facing reality phase, and then Amazon, remember Windows 95? Remember when they had the massive monopoly in operating systems, and Microsoft entered its ultimate market opportunity, and then we went back into facing reality phase as you saw more and more competition take away its market share on operating systems, on all of its core businesses, until it started actually launching its cloud computing and generating massive amount of revenue. And then you saw Microsoft once again enter into the ultimate market opportunity, a second ultimate market opportunity phase. So I want you to keep that in mind and what I present. And I want you to remember what we talked about, making an observation, whether it's true or not. I mean, well, this is simply just observing data that it is true. It's quite fascinating how Amazon actually re-entered towards the top end of its market structure. So we'll come back to that in a moment. I first want to go back now over to Bitcoin, take a look. And as part of this process, I asked ChatGPT, could you explain Bitcoin's power law concept to me? And I just want to read through this very quickly. Power law concept is rooted in mathematics and finance, often used to model and understand Bitcoin's price behavior over time. It's a long-term model. And like I said, I really didn't think so. It's completely legit. I'm going to show you. And at the same time, I think we could do much better in looking at what we could do for price accuracy. It suggests that Bitcoin price follows a power law relationship, meaning its price scales in a predictable way according to mathematical power function Concept is identifying long-term trends and understanding Bitcoin's exponential growth and diminishing returns as adoption increases. So I personally believe that, yes, Bitcoin will experience exponential growth. I personally do not believe that Bitcoin is going to experience diminishing returns because that's not what is seen on S-curve adoption. But we're going to find out soon enough as we've entered early majority whether or not that is correct or whether or not that's erroneous. But that is something that I have always stood by and continue to stand by. What is power law? Blah, 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 blah. So the basics of power law growth models, such as Bitcoin's law growth curves, these curves help identify potential price floors and ceiling. The funny thing about price floors and ceilings is they exist till they don't anymore. I would take this part out, stock to flow model. I don't really think that it has anything to do with maybe the scarcity of Bitcoin. I mean, of course, the scarcity of Bitcoin is what is definitely helped make the bullish case for Bitcoin and therefore increase its adoption. The supply reduction due to this halvings definitely was this like programmed function to help create these bull phases and bear market phases. The bull phases to attract attention, the bear market phases then for people to build. We all know going forward at this point in time, the miner's reward plays a very, very small role in this overall puzzle. Why does it work for Bitcoin? Adoption follows an S-curve, something we heavily have embraced and believed in. The early adopters drove the initial price increase. That's correct. And as adoption grows, the rate of increase slows yes, but not yet. As you get towards, and I'm going to bring this up 1 second. I'm bringing this up on purpose over here because imagine like Bitcoin over here is just entering the early majority. And during the early majority phase, there should be massive, massive growth until you enter the late majority. And during the late majority, you're going to see it slow down and then come like this. And what that is and what that looks like, none of us at this point in time are really know for certain. Now, one thing that could cause, I believe, Bitcoin to enter an ultimate market opportunity, and then like Microsoft did here, kind of flatten out as we reach the top of the late majority, and then maybe even have a second ascent, would be specifically if there was central bank adoption of Bitcoin, not just placing it on its balance sheet as reserves as they do gold, which would definitely help, of course, overall adoption. And when we talk about adoption, we're not really talking anymore about the number of Bitcoin users, the number of holders. And yes, of course, that continues increasing. But more importantly is that dollar amount per user. And we're entering into a stage now where we're seeing Michael Saylor just posted after presenting over the weekend to Microsoft's board about potentially them taking a Bitcoin position. He posted 60 public companies that might soon also do the same. And the amount of Bitcoin that each of these companies or potential companies, or we're looking at the nation state of Brazil proposing legislation to take a Bitcoin strategic reserve. We're looking at the United States of America currently has legislation proposed to take a strategic Bitcoin reserve. The amount of money that's going into it is what is indicative right now of the early majority. It is possible at some point central banks take a position that's game played out by early Bitcoiners, but it is also possible if Bitcoin became the reserve currency of the world, or you would see some crazy other, if energy began being priced in Bitcoin, it's possible that we see also a second ultimate market opportunity phase for Bitcoin. I don't know that. You do not know that. I want to be ahead of the game. So we're just kind of doing what we do together and making sure that we have the clearest view that we could put together as we do our thing. All right. So fixed supply and halvings played a really important role early on. Network effects. Yes, the value of Bitcoin grows as more use it. Concept known as Metcalfe's law. So early on, for sure, fixed supply and halvings played an enormous role. Right now, it's more about adoption on an S-curve and those network effects. Limitations, no short-term predictive. The power law is broad framework and doesn't capture short-term volatility. It's a good thing that CTM knows a thing or two about mechanical systems to capture short-term volatility. Assumes continuity. It assumes Bitcoin will continue to grow in adoption and maintain its role in the market. And hey, that ChatGPT, that's very important. I don't think it's been mentioned in a long time. We've always talked about that our like overall base case on Bitcoin, which is ultimately two things. It's a hedge against the debasement of fiat, specifically of the dollar, and also dependent on continued adoption. And if any one of those things were to happen at any point in time, and you were not to see that continued adoption, if you were to see all of a sudden tomorrow, everyone that owns Bitcoin sell their Bitcoin and buy XRP, yep, obviously, when you're talking about S-curve adoption, if that adoption ceases at any point in time, that kind of takes away the thesis overall. If you remember, I took a really early stab at talking about Bitcoin having every year 107% increase and pointing out that at certain times it overshoots to the upside and at other times to the downside, barely going under here, barely going under here. Now, this was a poor attempt, but that's okay. It's those poor attempts that lead to ultimately uncovering something really useful. And is it possible that Bitcoin comes in and tags this at some other point in time? Maybe, but even still, it was a poor attempt and it was poorly done. If you look over here, you remember April 2014, and then look what happens over here. You all know since we've done a really good job at determining and finding the structure of Bitcoin. And this is massive, massive, massive signal. So now that we have been able to go ahead and find that actual structure of Bitcoin, here's that April 2014. And then you could see this area that we're in right now. Look at the difference. This is April 2014. And like I have the angle like this. It's completely wrong. That's okay. What note taking at is using with auto tab catalog over here. This is, I just copied and pasted ChatGPT onto a Google Docs, and it automatically did this over here, the auto tab. So that was nothing fancy, just worked out well, but it was a good outline to take a look at what's going on. I appreciate that, Jonathan. If anyone enjoys being here today, go ahead and do smash that like button. Leave a comment below. If you're watching this on the replay, share it with a friend. Subscribe to the channel. Is the entry for TQQQ on the close today or the open tomorrow? We'll take a look at that towards the end of the session. That is going to be on the open tomorrow. If it is confirmed by the close of today, the entry is on the open of U.S. equity markets. Our daily stocks only trade regular trading hours. So this was a failed attempt. And now we have defined and clear structure. So I went ahead and did the same, and I just started playing around. This all happened before I started looking at the power law. I said, okay, that's kind of neat. And we're looking at roughly like whatever. That's variable and can change. And if we enter into a continued bull market throughout the next year, 2025 and 2026, obviously we're overshooting to the upside. What I like about this over here, and I'm just going to go ahead and remove those really. Oh, I was going to try. Oh, well. I was going to try to remove these, but you could see that price during the facing reality stage, it undershot very, very, very well. And you could see that during Amazon. Look at during the beginning of the facing reality stage. This is like 2014 on Bitcoin. It undershoots very, very sharply to the downside as well. So we have that similar characteristic. And then since 2017, we have basically maintained this as a baseline, the one that I have bolded over here, and I'm continuing to show the annual average return on it. And we've gone under it. We got over here. We gone over it back during the lockdown crisis. During the bear market of 2022, we've gone under it. But using this guideline since 2017, it's clear to say that it looks to me like we spend at least, I mean, since 2017, you could say 90% or more above it. So it's a really good baseline going forward to be looking at what a minimum expected return could be out into the future. And you could also say, well, we've gone below it before. It's possible we could go below it again. So what I did was I went ahead and I added this line over here. I went on the price chart over here. I looked at this touch over here. I was looking at that touch. And then more importantly, where price based out over here. And I added that line. And I just wanted to have a line that I could say, well, that would be like the lower expectation. I actually lean towards that something like this would happen. That as Bitcoin now begins entering the ultimate market opportunity, fast forward out towards the end of this decade, and Bitcoin is probably traveling towards the upper half of its structure. So that looks like this. I mean, it's kind of crazy, but if this is the lower baseline we're talking about, that's like in this area over here. That's if we're looking at it repeating the behavior of Amazon on its S-curve. And again, it's not just Amazon. Amazon's just easy, low-hanging fruit to give us that example. So the next thing that I did was I went back and I looked at the power law and I was like, all right, let me try to debunk this and show you how off it is. So I went into 2030. So for 2030, Bitcoin says that it has roughly a medium line here of call it a 500,000, upper end of 1.5 million, and a lower end of 172,000. So I was like, all right, let's see what this would suggest. By the way, Bitcoin here closing its last trade as it's roaring in the bliss, taking basically 0.2% profit. Ethereum remains on the sideline. Cardano continues to build, now holding an open position, 215% into profit. Solana out on the sidelines. We're going to dig deeper into that after I finish this presentation on Bitcoin power law and looking for that further accuracy. So the next thing I did was I went overhead and I didn't even have this line in over here yet, the bottom one I just showed you. And I looked what does it suggest? This CTM structure model suggests that in January we have, and I could see over here as I looked for January, we have about the baseline is $614,000, which is pretty close to what the Bitcoin power law suggested. It suggested a baseline of 450,000. I look at the upper end. Our upper end is much higher. Now, I talked about if we were to exhibit any of the similar behaviors of Amazon, that actually we're not going to see price continuing to go like this. So many people show you that Bitcoin looks like that in diminishing returns, but we're going to actually reclaim this upper half of the structure. That puts Bitcoin, by the way, and I mean, these prices start getting a little silly. So that the upper end of the Bitcoin power law was in January 2030, right here, where we have the midpoint. So ours is above, our upper range is above the upper end of the Bitcoin power law. This is really cool. We're going to be able ultimately to be able to see who was more correct, who was right. And there's a big difference between putting out an estimation of in 2030, 5 years from now, between 450 and 1.5 million. Don't forget our baseline where we feel comfortable if you wanted to go ahead and plan out what do you expect the expectation would be. And you could say, well, even though we spend 90% above this line, this is a good line, I believe, for forward forward forecasting price at a given time. But I want to talk about that lower band. And remember, I added in, I don't think that Bitcoin would trade back down to its lower band. I don't think so, as long as adoption continues. I know the debasement of the dollar is going to continue. That's mathematically assured. We got that going for us. We need the adoption. Adoption seems to be accelerating a lot faster than most of us, I think, perceived at this point into 2024. And that could change radically if the United States does indeed. Now, Polymarkets is placing a 28% chance that by the first 100 days of the new Trump administration, they're going to go ahead and approve a strategic Bitcoin reserve. That means over the next 5 years, buying 1 million Bitcoin, regardless of price, buying 200,000 Bitcoin a year. Now, I don't know if 100 days is the right thing for Polymarkets to be betting on or not. Personally, think that there's a lot more things that the administration needs to focus in on during their first 100 days. Nevertheless, if they were to approve the bill at any point, let's talk about the first year, not really the first 100 days. That's a massive game changer. We are going to see FOMO on the nation state level. You already saw it with Brazil, and it's going to continue. I don't think we hit the lower bound, but I wanted to know what that lower bound number was. This was what I found most interesting. So I went to January, and I saw it said 100. Oh, there you go. Let me get it exact as I can. And it said $172,000. I went back to the Bitcoin Power Law, and they have their lower band for 2030 at $172. And I was like, you know what? That's fascinating. That's absolutely fascinating here. I have to give a lot more credit to this model than I originally thought. Now, where my own hypothesis differs from this model, I like that we have the same floor. I love that we have the same floor. My expectations in 2030 seem to be higher, and absolutely higher on the high end if that were to happen. So we'll find out. We'll see who was right. I have to give a lot more credit to this model than I originally thought existed. And it actually, more importantly, helped affirm a lot more of the work that we're doing over here. And I love to have that type of guidance going forward. Now, let's get into our positioning and look what's going on. Bitcoin here on the Bitcoin bull run continues holding open position here, 47% into profit. BTC 108 on the 8-hour is out of the market. Again, just locking in 0.2%. Feels good as Bitcoin is right here on the back foot. Again, I don't know if we're seeing some flag behavior developing, getting ready for the next leg up. We know that December is seasonalities really paint to a strong picture for Bitcoin, especially when we've seen in the past. And every time in the past, we've seen a green September, a green October, and a green November. It's happened in 2016. It happened in 2015. It happened in 2023. Here we are, 2024. In any previous time we've seen the prior 3 months all green. December has also been green. We'll see if we are able to go ahead and continue that streak or not. But right now, Bitcoin is under pressure. From a trading standpoint, we're out of the market, waiting for that next opportunity. From a longer term, look at BTC 101. Even though that last trade that was taken on BTC 107 and 108 was like 0.2% profit, good job here staying on the sidelines by BTC 101. Obviously, for longer term traders, BTC bull runs still quite strongly in effect. Ethereum was like a joke over the weekend. CTMX missed all of this profit, and then it entered the market, exiting the market. CTM 2.0 still holding on to that trade, and as it comes here right now, you can see that we still got quite a ways before we give up on that trade. Right now, 35% into profit. I've looked at like further potential development models on V3, anything Summit's ever developed. Any model that I have or seen, Ethereum missed this trade, except for CTM 2.0, the original. funny, interesting. Cardano continues holding this open trade, this monster. And just like good thing that we said, hey, Cardano plays such an important role in all of this. Let's not get rid of it. Let's keep it. Specifically during bear markets, it's a monster for making profit. And then anytime we said we're going to rip to the upside, we'll be there to capture. Solana here, this is like Ethereum, also missing this trade. And it was a big trade to the upside. If you haven't been following the conversation at this point, now we've had since CTMX was released, there's only been one change. And it was on, out of all of our models, and it was on Ethereum, and it was on the buy side. And we simply changed our stop loss. At the time, forsaking overall net profit. Since then, it's worked out to our favor. If you are trading Solana on CTMX, I want you to heavily consider taking off the RSI filter number 2, ST2. The difference in profit and drawdown, the drawdown stays the same. Here's with it off. I'm sorry, it's instead of 13%, it goes up to 16. But the potential profit there and is just absolutely non-comparable. Spend some time, do some work, go through all different periods on Solana, look at ST2 off and on, and decide what you want to do going forward. It's been determined by CTM that going forward, the use of ST2 on Solana is simply not worth it. Also, we have what's taking place here on the legacy markets. So we got NASDAQ here, right off, looking on a closing basis to challenge the all-time high here today. And because of that, we're seeing lots of our choice stocks here really gaining in profit. Here's the look at NVIDIA we did together. NVIDIA, we saw that massive breakdown occur. We lined it up before the breakdown. We had the breakdown. We had a slight retest and a strong acceleration down. And then we put in together on that live that horizontal support. So far, price is bouncing off of that support, but it's still not made a repair. This breakdown is still in effect. And Solana and NVIDIA here, if it were to resume down and break below, that would be a strong signal that we are probably and likely getting ready for a correction on NASDAQ does not align with the seasonalities. Tomorrow's session is going to be a lot more NASDAQ market focused, is going to be stock market focused, is going to be totally lit. I hope you are able to watch that one with us. But over here, it's too soon for me to be looking at when the repair is made. Right now, for a repair to be made, we have to at least get above that red line, and we will be right towards, right now, breaking out towards the top. You can see TQQQ right now with the pending long. That is confirmed at the close today. If that happens, the entry is tomorrow morning on the market open. We do have NVIDIA out of the market throughout all of this, roaring in the bliss at new all-time high account highs. We have FNGU pushing that position here, 20% into profit. And we have Tesla pushing that position 23.9% into profit. The dollar found our support and so far it bounced. We were looking at Bitcoin and talking about that potential lower highs. Is that what's taking place here potentially on the dollar as well? I don't know, but if we break this line over here, that suggests then we have a deeper pullback towards this area of support. It's coming in around 103.5. A different view of the dollar is this one over here. And we can see that also we have come into that area of support, that confluence, bounced so far. And then we talk about for this really strong run, ever since the Fed began cutting rates that has taken place on the dollar, for it to be invalidated, not only invalidated, but roll over the other way. And you all know what happens if we see the dollar run over the other way, what happens to Bitcoin and crypto. But we have this lower trend line over here that's coming in around 103.5 as well. So we have strong confluence on both looks of our dollar. We did same thing as Fed began cutting rates over here. We had that massive strong buy signal or sell signal on bonds on the underbelly. This was on the gap down, the place to close out that trade, and we continue to see that acceleration down. It's too soon for me to look for where that's invalidated. That line I'm drawing right around there would be the earliest opportunity, and because I don't want to miss this. I don't know what's going to happen, and I wonder if some type of underbelly belongs there. I'm not sure. Oh, I don't want to take two. I'm not sure today. I want to get into that forward and tighten that up. I think it's still soon. I know that we didn't go long bonds here. That was just an exit. Obviously, my expectation is that at some point we find a bottom. We have a confluence of support here coming from this support and this support. And then if that breaks, then we should see a bigger push down back towards 4%. And then we could find the next level of support down over here. And then ultimately over here. If we break this one, then something is wrong at any point in time, whether it's here, here, or here. I'm expecting ultimately yields then to sell off and take out this high. So I'm trying to time that next. And that's why I didn't go over here and say, oh, that's a massive, nice trade. Now we're just going to reverse and go long bonds. My expectations are eventually we bottom and then take out this high. So what was the first exit call? This one up here? Everyone. Chio, Michael Saylor is buying that Bitcoin over the counter. That doesn't have a direct relationship on the price. However, we talked about scarcity. There's only so much large size over-the-counter Bitcoin that could be purchased before those bids for that are going to be raised significantly higher. Right now, it's available. He's eating at it. The race is just getting started. We're thinking long-term over here, and we're just trying to give the awareness that we put. I think you're over here, Ace, once we came back down, and then we had the underbelly breakdown. Maybe, but we got it. I mean, we're trying to be as early and as aggressive as possible. And I think, you're right. It's not, that's the thing about trading. The thing about trading is that no matter how good of a day you could have, it was never perfect. And it's the pursuit of perfection that continues to help us grind further and further, all sharpening our skills, therefore sharpening the skills of those around us, the collective. Iron sharpens iron as we continue moving towards the summit. Everyone, have an incredible day. God bless you. On your way out, if you didn't smash the like button, go ahead and do so. We'll continue with that all-season video that I began presenting on Friday. But tomorrow is really going to be focused on the stock markets, something that I'm really, really excited to present. And we're going to continue forward. Have a beautiful day, everyone. I'll see you all on the inside.